https://israel snapshot. And I'm also broadcasting this from my Facebook community, Museums, Fun, and Learning. And I'm trying to promote that as well. I'm trying to create a community here of people who just enjoy museums, fun, and learning to talk about stuff. So you can share your stuff. And that's, started just last week and slowly building that. So I just recorded a half hour or 20-minute broadcast, which I thought was presenting live because I'm new to this app. And I was actually just talking to myself. It was really funny, but it helped me iron out my thoughts. So I've labeled this broadcast an entrepreneur journaling in the AM. This is when I do my work. I get up in the morning. You see, I'm still in my pajamas. And this is when I'm more productive and sharp. And I just, the ideas flow and you write them down. So a couple things I want to talk about now. The first one is people ask me this question is, how do you get all these things done? Like, when do you sleep? Right. And another thing I want to mention has to do with feedback and receiving feedback. And then through this, I'm going to talk about some of the things I'm doing and ask you for your input and if you have any questions, etc. So let's talk about the first question is, how do you get everything done? So I can't really answer that question. It's about time management, which is sometimes better, sometimes worse. I'm very artistic. I like to draw things. So here's, I have buckets of colorful markers and pens on my desk, and I'm constantly working with highlighters, and I just keep my notes are colorful, and I love using clipboards. So that's my filing system. My filing system is just, I write things down on my clipboards, and then I just organize them in a certain way. I review them on a weekly, monthly, sometimes daily basis, depending what it is. It's a filing system inspired by David Allen's Getting Things Done. David Allen's Getting Things Done is a great book for time management, which if we have bad time management, we're not going to get around to reading and implementing. But anyway, so I do all these different things. As an entrepreneur, there's always a lot of things you got to do. I mean, you got to promote yourself. You got to make sales. You got to maintain customers. You got to reach out to things. You got to think about scaling your business, and you got to make money at the end of the day. I mean, you have to live. You're not secured by a 9-to-5 job. You don't have anyone paying your pension. You have to do it yourself. So it's a lot of hard work, and that's a lot of the incentive is, listen, I have to make sales. I have to make ends meet. So some of the things I've been thinking about now is how Corona has changed my business model and really opened up a floodgate of great things that are potentially possible. So to do that, I'm going to give you a concrete example of scaling my business and how I started thinking about my museum tours and how everything changed now. And then maybe there's a way you can, contribute, ask questions. You're always invited to. So I do museum tours around the world. I started off at the Met. I was living in New York for almost 7 years. And we're talking about a story that happened like 3 years ago on Passover, Passover holiday. And just to give some context, in the Jewish holiday of Passover, the first day of the 7-day holiday is called Yom Tov. It's like Shabbat, like Saturday. So I don't work. I don't touch my phone, don't deal with money. And the last day is 2. Now, if you're overseas out of Israel for a long and complicated historical reason, you keep each one of those days twice. In other words, instead of having 6 days in which I can work, and there's also Saturday in between, right? And Friday means you have half a day, depending on how they align. Sometimes Saturday and the holiday are going to be on the same day, and then you luck out and you have more days to work. And it means you have 1 day less. So I spent the first part of the holiday in Atlanta, Georgia, with my grandparents, with my grandmother. She should live long and healthy, and my grandfather of late memory. And I was having a good time there. And I said, listen, I have a public tour or two scheduled for the last 2.5 days of the holiday. In other words, I have the Yom Tov, like the Sabbath, coming in, at eves at sundown. So I have 2.5 days to work at the Met. The Met's open 10 to 5. You can fit in 3 tours with time to breathe in between. Okay. So I had so many requests for this tour that I had to split each one into 3 just to fit everyone in. I had 35 people on one public tour. And at the end of those 2.5 days, I remember coming home with $1,600. That's $1,600 after my expenses. I'm not talking about all the taxes and stuff like that. I'm just talking about all the expenses of like paying admission and so on, which is, by the way, brutal. The Metropolitan Museum charges $25 a person, non-negotiable. You can be a lifelong member. It does not matter. You can be a New York resident who comes in and pays what you want. It does not matter. You join a tour, you have to pay $25, and on top of that, pay the guide. Imagine how many faces I get when I say I'm charging you $45 or $50 for the tour, and it's like, but yeah, well, $25 are going to the museum, and people don't get it. But I'm a member, but it doesn't matter. The museum doesn't care. I believe me, I've tried everything. So I managed to make $1,600 in 2.5 days. And then I realized I need to spend the entire time of these holidays making tours instead of just those 2.5 days. It's a sacrifice. I want to be with family, but that's how it is. You got to make money, you got to make ends meet. So then I started thinking, how do I make this work for me? How do I scale my business? I know that I'm not going to have that many customers every single day because not everybody's on holiday all the time, right? But I also have schools and private tours and communities. I basically did the math of how I can max out the profits for a day based on the amount of time that I have, which is just tours of the museum. I'm not talking about lectures. I'm not talking about teaching. I was also a part-time teacher, right? Just that. And at a certain point, you reach a glass ceiling because there's X amount of time that the museum's open. There's X amount of people you can have on a tour. You're limited to like 35, 40 people. You can't, in that museum, you can't have more. And it's just hard to manage more than that unless you invest in equipment like sound equipment. There's challenges. Okay. But anyway, I did the math and I built a business model and I started working for it. And I did everything I needed to do around it. I just had an article published this morning. Well, it's February 18 in the Jewish Link New Jersey expanded edition. Just came out right now. I'm wondering if there's a chat here and I can put it there. I don't know how to do that. It says private comments. Beats me. Anyway, so the Jewish Link New Jersey, if you're looking at that, there's a link to that. I guess you can find it online. I reach out, I get articles, people write about me. People reach out to me and want to write articles about me, which is cool. And that's how people get to know you in certain crowds. Certain crowds, you got to know where they are. So that was working. And then Corona hit and all of my plans went to pot. So my basic plan was maintain customer connections in overseas, move back to Israel, develop your product in Israel, and then occasionally travel. Corona changed everything. We moved to Zoom, and that was a blessing in disguise for me because it enabled me to work remotely, and it gave me two advantages. The first advantage is that I can sit in front of my computer and still reach the same community and reach more people. And the second advantage is that I can take you to more locations and more museums. You just have to know what's available on Google Street View. Now, long story short, I've realized that at the end of the day, there's only so many hours that I can work. And I have to create the product that will work for me. In other words, I put out the work up front, which is create a virtual digital tour, and then I put it on the net. Now, here's where I have a question. I've been thinking about this for a couple weeks now. There's two possibilities for how to watch a pre-recorded tour, and I'm not talking about recording my screen from Zoom. That's very nice. I have that as a private hidden link on YouTube for people who paid and missed the tour. That's fine. I'm producing something completely different. It's a higher level of editing, just like my archaeology snapshot YouTube, it's not on my channel, so I can't promote Tanakh study. It's them. I'm promoting Tanakh study. They have a lot of stuff going on. The Tanakh study on YouTube promote my archaeology snapshot, which is a weekly overview of each one of the books of Tanakh of the Hebrew Bible. And it's kind of fun because the technology is different. You see me on the bottom there, with the silhouette cut out, and then there's the background. So fine, it's just different level editing, and I can call things out, highlight things. It's a little more controlled. Fine. So let's say I produce that and I put that online. Now I have one line for the public tour. In other words, you pay what a public tour would pay, which is I'm working only in the Israeli shekels, which is 37 shekels. It's about $11. I can't do dollars. I tried that, and the conversion rate for my credit card company, the payment company, is slaughter. I'm losing almost half the money. So I can't do it. So, I'm assuming on the other end, everyone has their own deal with their credit card company. It's different. It's usually better. So I'm charging that. It's like $11 for a public tour, and you can watch it for, I don't know, 72 hours, whatever. But then there's the same one for private tour. And a private tour would generally pay what, I don't know, 20 people on a public tour pay. Okay. So how do I distinguish between the two and make sure that a school or community, which has different means and different needs, doesn't get the public tour and just share it on a screen? So yes, you can work with the honor system, and some people are gonna cheat. But how do you do this? How do you set this up correctly? I'm assuming there's a programming solution, there's a drop-down menu. I don't know. I want to make it easy. I want to make it easy for you guys to be able to just, watch that tour and enjoy it, right? So that's what I'm thinking about right now. I get up in the morning, I sit down and I just write down all these notes. And I'm just, I'm thinking like, how exactly do I do all this stuff? I have my notes on how do I break this up? How do I monetize? What am I doing? Where am I going? Scaling my business, et cetera, et cetera. So that's that. The second thing, and with that, I'm going to end, is feedback. So I'm a big believer in accepting constructive feedback. I usually ask for the feedback. I mean, I love the positive feedback. It's great. I'm a teacher, I'm an educator. I live for the sparkle in people's eyes when you see that they're enjoying what you're doing. But I want to think about how to get better. And the best ways I've grown is actually through feedback. So, there's two memorable feedbacks that I got in the museum, which completely changed everything I was doing. This is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I just received some feedback yesterday, which is, I mean, I have heard some of those things before, but it was much sharper when it came from the person it came from, who I generally look at as an authority on online broadcasting and as an educator, as a very talented educator. So I'm going to get to that in just a moment. The first one was a friend of mine who I invited on my tour. I think he's in his 60s. He's a regular museum goer, and he came to my tour. It was called the Age of Empires tour at the Met. It's my first tour, the first line of tours that I produced. And at in the middle of the tour, he gave me a look of, I'm suffocating. I need to get out of here. He shook my hand and left. That never happened to me. People love the tour, right? So I met him walking down the street in the Upper West Side when I was sitting with some friends at a restaurant. And I said, guys, I got to take care of something. I'll see you in a bit. I ran after the guy and caught him before he crossed the street. And I said, what I want to talk to you. I want to hear what was going on. He said, listen, you're my friend. I don't want to hurt your feelings. I said, give it to me. Bring it on. I want to know what went wrong. And he said to me something brilliant. He said, listen, I sit in front of a computer all day. I'm coming to the museum to get away from screens. And what do? You have your nifty little iPad. You lift up your iPad. This is standing in for my iPad. And you start showing us on the screen all kinds of stuff. Take me into the gallery. Take me to the museum. Engage me with the artifacts. And this is a bit of the feedback I got last night from the virtual tour, is I'm moving too fast. I'm moving around. Like, slow down. Pause. Space your sentences. Yeah, I'm hyper and all that stuff, but slow down. You're losing people, right? Take me into the experience. So, and that's one of the things he told me, and I really completely changed everything after that. I changed everything. There was another feedback that I got later, but I'm going to skip that. Time is short. But so the feedback that I got last night on the virtual tour and the Hebrew one, and then I went ahead and changed that in the English one, is exactly what I said. Slow down. Give me time to think. Give me time to breathe. You see what I'm doing now? This feels strange to me. First of all, because I'm hyper. And second of all, because I'm used to working in New York. And that's both in school and in the museum. And everything there is fast pace. You got to move, you got to move, you got to catch people's attention. You speak too slowly, I feel like I might lose people. But at the end of the day, that's in my head. You have the right confidence, you can get people's attention, right? Maybe you speed it up a little bit, then you slow down. However it is you do it. So it's slow down, pause, ask a question. And this is a very good idea that I got in general a while ago in teaching is, you notice how many times teachers ask a question and they right away answer or right away call out on people who raise their hands. Wait 3 more seconds, 5 more seconds, and more hands are going to come up, providing that you have the good classroom management skills to make sure that people don't call out and ruin it for people. And that's also something you learn how to do. In the words of, what is it? What was that meme from the Lord of the Rings? It is a gift. Boromir. It is a gift. No, but it's actually a learned skill. You can learn how to manage a classroom and to deal with those things. It's a learning curve for me too. So that was it. It's just to pause and wait. And even if people aren't going to call out the answer, it's to hear yourself think, hear yourself answer. And I implemented that in the question, in the session in the English tour last night. And one last thing I'm going to say, and this is perhaps the most important lesson that I learned as an educator over the last 12 years, less is more. Less is more. Now, the fact that I know that doesn't mean I've managed to implement it in every area of my life because I still overwhelm. There's so much to cover. There's a feeling of urgency. I feel that I owe it to my clients. I owe it to my customers. I owe it to you guys to give you more. And the truth is that even if I slow down and do less, I'm actually giving you a lot because it's not overload. And so that's something that I'm constantly struggling with because I need to be stimulated. I'm operating on 100 screens at 300 miles per hour. I am constantly stimulated. I need more and more and more. And I'm constantly, coming up with new ideas. And I really need to just slow down, to breathe, to meditate. I actually feel the difference between days I meditate and days I don't. I didn't meditate today and I didn't meditate yesterday, but every day before that I did. You know what? Let's take a few minutes to meditate. So I'm going to say, thanks for watching for now. I'm Nachliel Salavan. You're watching not Archaeology Snapshot. You're watching Israel Snapshot on the HAPS app. This is broadcasting through my Facebook community, Museums, Fun and Learning. You're welcome to join. Send a request. Fill out those 2 simple questions so I know who you are. I'm also broadcasting this on my Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. So you can always, find out that information by looking me up, or maybe I'll put it later in the comments. But I want to say thanks for watching. And